Welcome to Mimir, the podcast for ambitious entrepreneurs who want to launch and grow a successful business from day one. I'm your host, Maddie Kelly, and each week I sit down with founders who have been there, done that. We dive into the mindset, strategies, and practical tools you need to turn your vision into a reality. So let's get to work. Hey guys, welcome back to Mimir. Dinner dishes soaking in the sink, kids tucked into their routines. That's where my conversation with Tamara Laine began, which felt really fitting because so much of her story is about weaving the everyday chaos of life with the wild, exhilarating act of building something new. Before she was a founder, Tamara spent 15 years digging into other people's stories as a journalist and a documentary filmmaker. What she carried with her goes beyond storytelling. It is a relentless curiosity, a refusal to stop until she found the root of a problem. And that instinct served her really well when she started Empower, a company tackling a problem hiding in plain sight. How tens of millions of gig workers are shut out of financial systems designed for W-2 employees. The same investigative drive that once uncovered truths for documentaries now fuels her obsession with solving this inequity. But what makes Tamara's journey so Mimir-coded isn't only the problem she's solving, but how she's had to grow herself along the way. Learning to chase the hardest questions, learning to build with advisors who won't flatter her, learning to lead not just with inspiration, but with empathy. This is a conversation about what happens when a founder's eye for truth collides with the reality of building. It's about the grit to keep asking, to keep digging, even when the easy answer would be to stop. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Tamara to the podcast. Take your time. I'm free until 5, so.
All right. I think I am all good.
Okay, cool.
All right.
I should be good too, as long as my cat does not catch a bird and try to bring it inside. We're all good.
You know what? We just flow with it because I've got the door shut here, but that doesn't mean that my son is not going to come in and want my attention.
All right. Well, Tamara, thank you for being on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really thrilled to have this conversation.
Me too. And you piqued my interest when I heard investigative journalism, which is, I know, not what you do now, and we'll get into that. But I would love for you to just sort of like give a quick overview of how you got to where you are today. And then I kind of want to dive into a little bit of the investigative journalism stuff, because I'm purely curious. And then we can talk about everything else.
Yeah, no, I actually, I've really come to embrace my career journey because it's completely nonlinear. And I think that has made really an excellent combination for a founder now as a startup founder. So let me go back and I'll give you the quick overview. So I started my career in documentary films and journalism. And as you said, I was in investigative journalism, and I would say that was kind of my career in corporate, right? And I spent over 15 years working in media, helping build media companies, launching media startups, launching new divisions. And it was so much fun. And it taught me some really critical skills, which one is digging into information facts, right? Being able to get to the root of problems was my big thing. Is how do I dig in and find what is this problem and how do we solve it? Which now translates the same thing for a startup and doing a product, right? What is the problem? How do we solve it? And the same research goes into that, and and a little bit more. But then I decided I really was passionate about working with female founders and doing communication. So I left the news and I went to go work with female founders and startups. And I caught the bug. I absolutely loved helping people launch companies. And then I did it myself.
It's so interesting, like the through line there of getting to the root of problems and solving them, because I really think that like that's the heart of entrepreneurialism, is that as a founder you're just simply obsessed with like a particular problem space and trying to solve that problem. But I'm also like, what kind of documentaries did you do? Like what was that field?
I mean, I'm just a curious person,
Yeah.
right? And so the first documentary that I had the honor of working on was a documentary that went on HBO, and I was an associate producer, and it was on it was a community in upstate New York called Lilydale, and
Okay.
it's a community of mediums, of people who talk to the dead.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
It was absolutely one of the more interesting times, such a great way to start my career and learn about storytelling and learn about people and human nature and behavior and psychology. I mean, there's so much wrapped up into that documentary. And then I went to work on two of my own. One was on mosquitoes in Key West, because
Mm,
I really am a nerd, and I when I see something interesting, I'm like, I need to know more. And the other was on land rights in the Four Corners area of Colorado.
that's so cool. I only ask because like I'm such a crime junkie, and
Yeah.
so I am obsessed with podcasts specifically that are like, you know, that level of investigative journalism, but specifically for like unsolved cases. So that's, I just had to ask you.
Yeah.
But something else that I'm really interested in, and like when we talked off air, you mentioned how hard it is for founders, especially women, to like understand, verbalize, and put into action their own stories. And I'm kind of curious to get your take on like why you think that is, and how your experience with journalism helped you navigate that in your business.
Yeah. So I think, I'm going to make a broad statement. It's not true for everyone, right? But in general, women are raised to be humble. Women are usually the ones that prop up other people, right? We are
Mhm.
very good at telling other people's accomplishments. We tend to shy away from elevating ourselves, right? Well
Totally.
known statistics, we don't ask for raises. We put ourselves usually last when everybody else needs something. And so that also comes into telling your story, right? I mean, that's like the fundamental part of it is when you're telling your story and you're a startup founder, you have to get up and you have to boldly say, I have the best idea and here is why. And I don't think it's something that comes as natural, and it's purely a matter of conditioning, right? And so once you can transform that conditioning, you can really change the narrative of a female founder, right? And how they're going out into the world boldly, without, unapologetically. And they should be, because the idea is brilliant and they should be able to shout it from the rooftops. So that's one thing that I started to look at in one of the roles that I was doing when I was a journalist, was interviewing impact startup leaders. And
Mm.
so when I saw this trend, I went, I think I can really make a difference. And so when I jumped out to work with female founders, I really thought, okay, this is a way we can, I can use my skills to hone in and say, here's how to tell a really compelling story with you at the center of.
What are some of the tips, like if somebody's listening as a female founder and they're like, I have no idea how to do that? Because I even feel like, you know, I think about, you know, jobs and resumes and stuff like that. And it's very weird to put yourself in the position of advocating for yourself in that way and saying, like, yes, I'm the right person for this job. And I feel like founders have to do the same thing. So I'm kind of curious, like, if somebody wants to do this at home, what would you walk them through to sort of get over that mindset?
So first I would say write a recommendation letter or for yourself, as
Mm.
if you were doing it for a friend. So, like, what would you say about this friend, which is you as the founder, and write that recommendation letter and the outline of like why you would say that this product is great or what you're doing is great, and do it through that lens of someone else doing the recommendation letter, right? Because you're more likely to, flatter and talk about all the accomplishments and brush over some of the things that would be challenges. So that's the first thing that I would say to start with. And then the second is really it's that practice, right? Putting yourself in this position to have to be bold gets you over that faster, right? And so you just You can do it in many ways. You can just say, okay, I'm going to do media, or I'm going to practice my pitch and go to pitch competitions, or I'm going to, do social media and get out there every day with something about my product or about me. And you just have to start, because the first 10 times are going to feel incredibly awkward. Then, by the time you get to the 20th, you're like, okay, this is my norm. And then by the time you get to the 30th, you're like, yeah, this is absolutely, I'm on top of my game. I feel it, and I feel the power of what I'm saying. And, also work with a coach. I think it
Mm.
was way too long in my career before I started working with coaches. And it is a magical thing. I really feel like everybody who can should get a coach.
Like a business coach or a life coach?
A mindset coach, a life coach, like, honestly, where is it that you need that help? And in so many ways, mindset, business coaches, they blur those lines. So, you kind of find what is it that you feel is maybe your weakness and get a coach for that. And just, it'll help you get over it so much faster. Because if you're a female founder, if you're a founder, forget,
Mm.
if you're a founder, there's, you're going to have to be doing these things. You're going to have to be in the spotlight. You're going to have an incredible mindset, because you go out there boldly when everyone else is telling you that things are going to be challenging, and you're going to hear no 100 times. So, like, you have to get yourself in a position where you feel unstoppable.
Yeah. What was it about founders during your time working with them before where you are now that drew you to them? Like, what made you obsessed with them?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm trying to think of, like, what made me obsessed. I mean, I love startups, right?
Hmm.
I love 0 to 1,
Yeah, me too.
because it's a spark. It is a moment in time where you're trying to catch lightning in a bottle, and you have all this creative energy, and you usually have people with a lot of creative energy around it too. And so it's before everything becomes a little bit over um frameworked, over processed, right? And
Mhm.
so you have all this room for imagination. And I guess as a creative myself, I love that time of imagination.
Yeah, I'm asking only because I feel like it's very similar for me. Like, I do this podcast obviously because I'm obsessed with entrepreneurialism. I'm obsessed with founders, and I similarly like focus in on the 0 to 1 because I think there's so much potential there, and I think that's where so many people fall off too. Where I'm like, that's sort of the inflection point where if they don't have the right support or the right mindset, like so many amazing ideas will just go away because of that. And I'm like, well, how can I try to create a place where they can be nurtured so then that can grow? Because I think small businesses, like anybody in a startup, it's an incredible thing to innovate, and I love to champion that. So I was kind of curious to know, like, what gave you the bug, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly just think it's that creation part. That's why I liked documentaries. You take an idea,
Mm.
you see it. Same thing with the news, like, I have a story idea, the story comes to completion, I see it. Um, that's the pattern. It's, you have an idea, you build it, you see it. Um, but what you mentioned reminds me of, I went and saw Guy Raz a few months ago, who does How I Built This, and he wrote the book How I Built This, and he was
Wait,
talking
like
about
the TV show, How I Built the How?
the podcast.
Oh, the podcast. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
You know what I was thinking of? I was thinking of that show where they like tell you how all the weird stuff is made. Is that how it's made? How this is made? Do
Oh,
you know?
how yeah. No, no. So this is the one that talks about,
Yes.
how these business owners built empires, or, like, he's
Yes.
interviewed so many people. And one of the points that he made that just stands out is he talked about timing. And, this one business, I can't remember the name of it, that he pointed out, it was like the guy was ready to give up and took one more meeting. And then, like, that was the meeting that changed the whole trajectory of his company. And it's like so much of a startup founder's journey is just the grit to make it through the hard times to the yes.
Yeah. 100%. I think that's why mindset is so important, right? Everybody can have a good idea, but the difference is those who are able to execute. And with being a founder, it's such a roller coaster. You have to be able to be a surfer and ride the waves. Otherwise, I think it does take. I also say all the time, like it's not for everybody. You really have to be a special kind of person to make it work. But it's it's also interesting because every founder I talk to, I'm like, knowing everything that you know now about the level of dedication, energy, time, money that it takes to make something like this work, like would you do it differently or would you choose a different path? And almost always the answer is absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's just fascinating.
It's a rush, right?
Mm,
But a good one, because if you love what you're producing, then it's not really a job.
yeah. And I'm sure now that you're on the other side of it as a founder, like you can, attest to that, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. All of it, everything that was said.
How has your journey been? Like, I'd love to think to talk or have you walk us through, like, what was the spark of the idea? How did you get started? What did that look like? All that good stuff.
So for Empower,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, yes, I'm the founder of Empower now, and it's a AI powered financial app for modeling credit for gig workers. So there are 80 million gig workers in the US. 6 out of 10 of them say they can't get a loan, and that's because they don't make a W-2. They're not really easy to assess.
Hmm.
But, you know, now we have all this access to data that actually shows the whole person. So, that's what we're doing is we're creating these new profiles to show the holistic picture of somebody, as well as an AI powered assistant to help the borrower repay the loan. So basically what it is someone who's going to create a dynamic budget for the borrower and say, hey, this is, these are the steps that you can take in order to repay it. So it's basically a financial coach. My
Cool.
long-winded way of saying it. So my journey, like I said, I absolutely love the startup process. And I had been pondering this idea for a very, very long time. It's been a passion of mine. When I started working with female founders, access to capital was so hard. It was always a topic of conversation. And then as I started, just kind of broadening this and people I was talking with, I was just finding that anyone who didn't make a W-2 was telling me these stories of not being able to access a loan, not able to get a car, not able to get a home loan, not able to get an apartment, right? And I kept thinking about it. It was one of those things that never left me in my thought process. And so I thought, okay, now it's time. I actually had a call with a friend and I was talking about, what is it that I'm going to do next? Am I going to, go work for this person? I had like a job offer and I was like, should I go do this? Should I take time off? What should I do? And she goes, you need to start your own thing. She goes, it's time. You've helped a lot of other people build companies. Like you need to do your idea. Right. And so I buckled down and I did, one of the things that I love doing comes back from investigative journalism. I poured myself into, okay, I see this trend. So how can we solve it? And that's how I came up with Empower. And so I started talking with potential technical co-founders. And someone recommended go to the Y Combinator site. And so I did the founder matching, which is such a great site. I had dozens of great conversations with technical founders.
Nice.
And I talked to a bunch of technical co-founders who would just go, this is a great idea. Let's build it. We can build it in a month and we can start testing it. And I went, you know what? I feel like it's got to be a little bit more technical, a little bit more complicated than that. Like I'm not an engineer, but what I do know is that what I'm thinking in my head is more complicated than, like I can't build this with Lovable.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
um, and I was like, and I really want to figure out.
Sorry, no, I just wanted to ask for your AI, are you guys training your own models?
We're not training our own models. No.
Oh, okay.
No, no, no. That's because that's very expensive.
Right.
So no, we're gonna leverage Claude, OpenAI. But yeah, so I was like, no, this has to be more complicated. And I want a moat. Because that's another important thing that you need to be thinking about as a founder is not just is this a good idea, but does it have a moat? And what is that moat? Um, and so I said I want to build an underlying technology that creates a moat around this
Mhm.
because, creating a new credit risk model is not new off of alternative data. But
Mhm.
the way that we're leveraging agentic AI is new. So I found this one woman who I sent a message to, and I I said, hey, like your experience is spot on with what I'm thinking. Here's my idea. Do you want to talk? And she goes, no, it's too complicated. And I went, okay, hear me out. Will you just jump on a call with me? You're like, yeah. And so she said no again. And so then I sent her a very long outline of what I was thinking with my white paper. And I was like, this, I really think that you are the one, especially because you said no to me in the first, like, because you got the idea, you understood
Yeah,
what I was
completely
trying to do.
understood.
Yeah. And so after, the third time she jumped on a call with me and now she's my co-founder and she's brilliant building out the whole thing. It's great. But I mean, that was something, if you talk about lessons that you should take away, you should find a co-founder that challenges you
Mm,
and that's thinking, of the hard things, not just how fun this would be.
yeah, 100%. And I think there's a lot of lessons in there to be pulled out, but I think one of your superpowers is definitely research and like understanding a problem space. And I think that half of that is like passion, right? Passion for a problem will drive you to understand it better and to talk to as many people as you can about that. But I think your experience, you're building in a highly regulated space. It's a complex problem, it's a complex audience, it's very niche. How do you navigate the gap between caring about the problem and actually building something that the industry needs? Like finding that sweet spot, I think, is what drives great products forward versus like separates them from the people who want to do something but like can't quite figure it out?
Yeah. And so I think there's no right answer to that question when it comes to like any one startup, right? Every startup is going to have its own unique thing. But I think there's one important thing. So, I mean, one, you're talking about the highly regulated space that's changing all the time. So, one is keeping up with that. And as a founder, you are going to have your attention in so many places.
Mm-hmm.
So, I make sure that I have advisors who specialize in each area,
Mm.
right? And so I'm actually chasing this advisor right now, similar to how I chased my CTO, who can give me this regulatory advice, consistently so that we've got it in the loop. Right now, I actually have my open AI task reminder to give me everyday regulation updates, right?
Cool.
Have it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good idea.
Yeah. I'm actually starting to utilize that a lot more with things for reminders so that I can just stay on top of these tasks and news and information versus like Google alerts because I find it to be way more productive.
No, that's a good idea. I'm going to start
Yeah.
implementing this. That's genius.
So I think your advisors are like your number one thing that you need to have is you need an advisor in all the areas that affect your business. And you need advisors who are tough and who can be highly, I would say, critical, but like really good feedback, blunt.
Mm.
You don't want an echo chamber. You don't want to hear how brilliant your product is. You want to hear the hard facts about your product so that you can iterate faster. But then when you're asking the question about like, you know, as a founder, you're like, I've got this brilliant idea and everybody's going to love it because I need this in my life, right? It has to solve a real customer's problem and
Mhm.
they have to want to pay for it. So in my initial research, I started talking to banks, which would be our customers, and asking them if they would pay for it. Right? Is this something that you'd pay for? And so now that we are in our development phase, I have found several lenders that I'm doing like hands-on, here's our product, like here's our product. What does this work for you? Does this not? Does this? And so building it in I wouldn't say like a collaborative way because it's more like feedback to make sure, I guess it is collaborative. Um, in a way that I'm ensuring that my product actually fits their needs. Right. And so those are key stakeholders who are absolutely, important in making sure that the product stays on track versus it's very easy when you're building something for it to veer off course because you think it's cool.
Yeah. And I think also with that, like you have an idea of what your product wants to be, but you have to start somewhere with that. And usually that means like a limited product feature a swath of options. Like, how did you guys decide what was the right first product to launch?
Simple. You ask the customer, what is your number one problem that hasn't been solved?
Mm,
And then you build the feature around that, like that you would pay for, right? Like what is going to make your life easier?
yeah.
And
Okay.
so once you have that answer and then you turn around and you can give it to them, like that's the fastest way because you can build out all these fancy features. But if they really only need one, all you have to do to start is solve that problem.
Yeah. I also think sometimes with in like in today's day, like with AI, I think it's also sometimes an interesting thought process where it might not be like the most profitable first choice of like a product feature, but if it's what gives your AI like a great foundation in terms of like how it can learn to be what it needs to grow into, like almost like picking the hard problem first to solve, and then that way like everything after that is a lot easier. But unless you have like an influx of capital on a consistent basis, if you're like a lucky founder in that way, that might not be the right answer at the right time. But yeah, I think starting with what is the most pressing issue and then going after that, and then like you can, because then everything else after that is nice to have, right?
Yeah. It's actually what's funny is my advisor just said that to me yesterday. She was like, you have to go after the hardest problem. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yep, yep, that's and know that you can solve it. And my CTO and I are like, that's what we're doing.
In working with so many founders and now being one yourself, I think you have a unique perspective. What do you think are like what have you learned from founders that you really took into the experience of becoming a founder yourself?
I mean, goodness, so many things. You learn things from the great experiences and you learn things from the terrible experiences,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I'm trying to think if there's one that really stands out as to like what advice I would give. I mean, I think there's a few things. So one, your team is the most important thing that you can build, but knowing how to build your team is really critical. So I've gotten into the tools of like figuring out people's superpowers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And matching team members that way so that you know who's how to get the most out of each team member and not expect things out of team members that they aren't naturally skilled at, right? So there's ways to build your team around that that's really useful. And then the next thing, I can't remember who said this. You know what? It might have been Dan Martell, but it was basically if a team member is taking away, like it has negative energy and is bringing down the team and does not vibe with the team, you need to get rid of them as fast as possible because they will kill your culture faster than anything else. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
hard one because you want to foster and give chances and try and, build up and not. But as a founder, you need to be highly aware of the person who's going to suck the energy out of your team because one of the things that you're doing is you are working fast and furious and long hours. And if anything starts to suck that energy, then you are fighting a losing battle.
Yeah.
So I think, team is so critical. How you build the team, how you maintain the team is one of the most important things you can think of as founder.
How are you identifying people's superpowers and then like matching them up? Like what do you look for to identify that?
So there's tests that you can do, right?
Okay.
The GC index you can do, and you basically look and you just say, um, and there's another test, the IDI, I believe is the name of it. But you look and you look at what makes people. How do they say it? There's draining activities, and there's activities that actually energize you, right? And so if the activity is draining, then you want to have the person stay away from that. But if it energizes, you want to really hone in on that and give them more um, tasks, more leadership in that area.
Mm.
So, I mean, for example, like one thing that I know that drains me, uh, and it's funny since I was a journalist, like I had to copy edit my stuff all the time, but it's the fine tuning aspect of a task. I like the big vision.
Yeah, me too.
So after I write something, after I need someone, a copywriter who's going to go through and fine tune it if it's like public facing, right? because I don't have the energy to go through it 3 times to make sure that all the spelling and punctuation and all that is
Mhm.
correct. There are people who love that, and fine tuning is their superpower. And so then you find that person and you pair us and we create great things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean about being able to create that. And there are tests, there are, conversations that you can have that bring that out.
Do you use that as part of like a career or like a job search? So, like, do you have people fill that out on their like resume and stuff like that? I'm just curious.
Well, because it takes up a lot of time, it's only
Yeah.
in like the final decision process.
Okay. Okay. All right. Just curious. So, kind of pivoting a little bit, I think being a founder is such a transformational experience. You obviously learn so much about yourself. I think that's one of the other reasons why I love it so much is to me, it's such a microcosm of our existence. Like it mirrors so much of what it's like to just be a human. And so I'm always curious to know like what being a founder has taught you about yourself. Like where have you seen the most personal growth through this journey?
That's another really fantastic that I haven't thought about much. Where, as a founder, have I seen it help me in my personal growth? So there's so many challenges, but I think I can actually bring up something. So I was working with a coach myself, and we went through one of these tests and to look at my leadership qualities and skills in order to for me I went into it and said I want to become a better leader. I want to make sure as I'm starting this process that I'm doing it the right way. So let's go through myself and like find out where I can improve. And one of the things that was really interesting that came up that I've thought about like consistently after is that my leadership with empathy was lower, but my leadership with basically like being able to inspire was really high.
Mm,
And I was like, well, that's good. But at the same time, it was like, it's not because the way that I had led was to pump everybody up and get them to just like rally around the idea versus with empathy, you create a much better connection.
hmm.
More with that, there's more group involvement in it, why you're excited for the product that you're building because you're closer, you feel like you are connected more. And
Interesting.
so when I realized that my leadership style was more from, the pulpit inspiring versus with my team leading with empathy, it changed my perspective on my leadership. And then I mean just kind of like how I approached things as well. And it's been still a journey. I think it will continue to be a journey, but like I noticed that throughout my life. And so whether it's how I lead or how I am at home, I find that that's something that's an interesting transition in my life and a new level of my journey as a leader.
So you're trying to go more towards like, or at least balance it out a little bit so you have some more of that empathy side of
Empathy.
thing.
Yeah.
Interesting. I feel like correct me if I'm wrong, but in my mind, it made me think about like war and how I feel like the king like leads through inspiration, right? Like saying like why we're going to war, like getting us all jazzed about like the reason why we're doing this and like this greater mission in life. Whereas I feel like the commander or the general like of the military
Who's
makes
on
a
the front
relationship
line?
exactly like bonds with the soldiers and like there's that sense of camaraderie there and I feel like it's more about like being with your brothers like protecting each other throughout and that's like a completely different style like not to say that neither work but just that was like the mental image I had in my mind when you were explaining the difference.
Well, yeah. And so kind of looking at your point, but I'll transition it just a little bit is with empathy, I think I can bring out the best skills, the best
Mm.
talents of my team more than if I'm leading with just my grand vision and then being like, follow. There's empathy and I can go, well, what really drives you? How do you think you can make this better? Like what would make you happier doing this? Um, like I said, I'm still on that journey and I think it's really interesting, but I think any leader should be looking at themselves consistently and figuring out how they can improve
Yeah.
or where the blind spots are. Because that
Yeah.
to
Well,
me was a blind spot. And once I found it out, I was like, well, it's not an easy fix, but it can really enhance how I work with people.
Yeah, and I think entrepreneurialism is very introspective. So it's like it requires a lot of self-reflection because I always say you can't grow your business beyond that which you are willing to grow as a person. So like how open-minded are you? How well do you take feedback? How well do you incorporate feedback? Like where does that take you then, and how are you consistently recognizing where you're potentially creating a bottleneck like as a founder and as a leader?
Yeah, because it's not always just a systems problem. And that's why, you have to have those outside. So whether it's your advisors, a coach, a mentor, you have to have those outside voices that are very blunt and honest.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to reaching out, asking a million people a million questions, talking to folks, not taking no for an answer like you did early on.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I feel like that's the perfect place to close. Thank you so much for joining and being here and sharing your wisdom and your expertise. I really appreciate it.
I'm so happy this conversation was great. Yeah, thank you.
That's a wrap on today's episode. If you feel called to support this podcast, please give it your honest rating or leave a review. And thank you so much for listening. You can find all the links to connect with Tamara in the show notes. And if you want more founder wisdom, community, and behind the scenes, come hang out at mamir.ink or come hang out on my Substack. I literally just started it a couple days ago. I'm pretty excited about it. Feels cool to be there. I hope to see you guys over there. And if not, I'll see you guys here next week.